Live from the hippest spot online, you've arrived at the Pop Culture Juke Joint, the only weekly podcast you'll need for intelligent showbiz chats. Located just up the street from the Peach Pit and down that dark, damp alley behind Fonzie's Garage, you'll find former newsman and current hard-boiled crime writer Anthony Venutolo, chatting with guests about everything from old-school classics to new-school staples. So head up to the bar, grab a drink, and settle in here at the Pop Culture Juke Joint. Now, your host, Anthony Venutolo.
Welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint, where each episode we take a deep dive into one particular aspect of pop culture, be it TV, movies, music, books, media, comic books, you name it. This week, Jack Lugo and I are really jazzed about the second season of Dice returning to Showtime. We have a great conversation about why we like this comedy, why we think it works, why we love Dice, and probably not for the reasons that you think. Yeah, we just want you to take a chance on the show if you haven't already. Or if you already watched the show, you can kind of maybe hear our thoughts about it. So you know what? Grab your drink, sit back, relax, enter the juke joint. Hickory Dickory Dock.
Is this a Steve Bannon joke?
It may be. So you know what I'm talking about when I say Hickory Dickory Dock.
Oh,
correct?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay, all right. So we're going to be talking today about Dice. Which is returning for its second season on Showtime. And I sort of like halfway reviewed this last year in, I don't know what it was, but it was just me kind of like testing the podcasting waters. And I kind of enjoyed Dice last season. I thought it was a charming, unoffensive little show. And by unoffensive, I don't mean, you know,
content of the
Dice, right. I mean, I just think it was an unassuming little show. It came, it did its thing. And I'm glad to see that it's back, right?
I'm glad to see it back too. I enjoyed the first season. The Adrian Brody episode was the best. I mean, Adrian Brody, for anyone who hasn't seen it, he comes in and he's a method actor. He wants to follow Dice around because he's doing a play. And you know, he wants to base his character in the play on Dice, and you know, he takes on the Dice persona, and you know, they it's like, you know, they get into it, and that was a really fun episode.
That was a really good episode. But before we go any further, let's just let people know that if they haven't seen Dice, the show basically is about Dice. It is a fictional version of himself. I would say a fictional low-rent version of himself, where he's a working, famous strip comedian. He is playing himself, but, you know, because there's always references to him being the arena comic.
Yeah. So it's a play on his life in a similar way that Curb Your Enthusiasm is a play on Larry David's life.
And which was a play on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, this is the model now for a lot of, you know, shows. And I do want to kind of maybe talk about that in a little bit, because I don't know if this is either a tried and true format, or are we now kind of a little bit tired of this, of the format of the comic playing himself. Is there room for that? But we'll get into that.
Sure.
But I do want to talk about Dice for a little bit. I love, as a former Vegas guy, I mean, I love the fact that they're really kind of setting these shows in Las Vegas. I mean, they're shooting on location.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely see. I mean, the first season, they have a couple, a couple of casino-based shows. The pilot, especially, where he doesn't want to pay the $5 ATM fee, and he ends up, gambling at the table because on the day of his girlfriend's brother's wedding, and the whole idea is he wants to avoid paying the ATM fee, so he gambles a few $100,000 just to be able able to avoid paying the ATM fee, and of course he loses, and he has to win it back, and the whole plot surrounds that. And I think there's another casino show towards the end of the series as well.
No, I mean you do. I mean the casinos are basically all throughout the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at one point they were shooting in front of Treasure Island. I think they were crossing the street, and when Michael Rappaport had his guest spot.
Oh yeah, I think that was the finale last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me, as an aside, that was a great episode.
That was.
Because this guy, Michael Rappaport is like the biggest unsung hero in the world of character actors. I love Michael Rappaport.
Yeah, I love it every time I see him. I mean, I think I first started to notice him because he was in a Woody Allen movie, and of course Dice ended up doing a Woody Allen movie as well. But yeah, he's a great character actor, and he's just whenever you see him, he's just a great performer.
He got a great performer, and I believe he was in Chuck, right?
I believe so. Yeah, he was in Chuck. Yes,
he was in Chuck,
yeah.
And I've been literally following his career since 1993. So every time I see him, I know I'm in for a treat. He feels like a guy you can hang out with. For anyone who hasn't listened to his podcast, listen to it, because you know what? You get something different every day on his podcast. It's basically just him riffing with his best friend. That's it. And they talk about sports and entertainment and culture and that kind of thing. Very, very funny and very popular. He's taken his podcast on the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's no joke. I mean, and I know you listen to the Stern Show a lot, and he's always going back and forth with the fantasy football stuff with Gary and stuff. So anyway, back to Dice. This season, more of the same. Correct.
Yes, the first episode of the second season just aired, and it's a play on "It's a Wonderful Life." In fact, the episode's called "It's a Miserable Life," and Dice is going to his best friend's nephew's bar mitzvah, and he runs into a rabbi from his childhood, and the rabbi implies that the world would be a better place if he had never created the Diceman character.
Exactly. And, he kind of wakes up in this fever dream of sorts as a different guy, as Andy, the garment salesman, correct?
Yeah, he wakes up as someone in the haberdashery business.
Yes, exactly. And one can't help, at least me, when I started watching this, I just went right back to those Soprano episodes when Tony Soprano woke up as like this salesman in the Midwest.
Yeah,
remember that?
Those dream episodes that people used to complain about, but were actually, brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching Dice as Andy, and I'm like, Andy seems like he has a pretty good life. And I love the fact that he didn't know who his wife was throughout the entire episode.
Yeah, his wife didn't recognize. Yeah, well, and the woman who plays his steady girlfriend didn't recognize him. But yeah, this is his wife. Connie.
He was married. Dice was married to some, I guess, his high school sweetheart.
Yeah, Connie Schneider or something. Yeah,
exactly. And then they're showing the slideshow they made for him in the tribute. And Natasha Leggero, she said, "Is that your wife?" He's like, "Who the fuck knows?" So. Little moments like that on the show are really, really good. I mean, for people who are really expecting that Dice of the 80s and early 90s, I don't think that's really present here. That character is a lot more subdued now, and it's kind of like we know that he's putting on the act. It's a
I think everyone knew back then that it was an act, but
you know what, man? I don't know if that is true. I really don't know if that's true. I mean, I was a little bit older than you back then, and I saw him a couple times, and when he was coming up, we didn't know we didn't know if he was was this guy Italian? Is it real? He's a Jewish guy playing Italian, but is he really? We didn't know who it was. Is his name Andrew? Is his name Dice? Who's this guy? Andrew Silverstein? What's going on? But he came on strong. He came on hard, and I think the CNN documentary. on comedy every Sunday night touched on this a little bit, I think, recently. When they did like their F word, episode.
The F word episode where the words all got beeped.
He probably took a lot more heat than he probably should have back at that time. I mean, he really got beat up a lot.
Yeah, I know. Women's groups protested him.
Everything.
He caught a lot of flack.
He caught a lot of flack, and I remember I watched it. He went on to the Arsenio Hall show, and he started crying. And a lot of people thought it was kind of like a gag or not, but this dude was crying. He was like, it started to get to him. He got kicked off of MTV. Remember that?
Yeah, and also he hosted SNL, and one of the cast members, refused to be on with him.
Yeah.
It is sad because his humor isn't for everyone, but I enjoy him. I mean, I've been a fan of the Howard Stern Show for a long time, so I kind of got to know Dice through his appearances on Howard.
Right.
And, those appearances were legendary, especially when he used to fight with Sam Kinison.
Oh my God, it was the best. I think Dice is best when he's really not on stage, but when he's just himself behind the mic, talking to people. I think that's the Dice for me that's really the funniest. And what people maybe are probably just realizing now is that Dice is a hell of an actor. Oh yeah, I mean when he did, he did Blue Jasmine a few years back, and he was great in that. And I think before that he was also in Entourage, which I don't think I saw, but he was great in Blue Jasmine. We saw him and loved him in Vinyl.
Yes,
remember?
Yeah, I forgot if he did one or two episodes, but I know his character ended up getting killed by Bobby Cannavale's character.
I mean, in Entourage, I really do think that was kind of like the prelude to what we're seeing now on Dice, where he was playing himself, basically. He was playing Dice on Entourage, and I think it was because of those, kind of newly subdued Dice appearances that he got Blue Jasmine. I really believe that. And back in the day, you can look them up on Hulu. He was on Crime Story.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, he played, I'm not going to say a gangster, but he played like a heavy for Ray Luca, who was the villain on Crime Story, and in a lot of those Vegas episodes. And he looked great, man, because that's when he was thin and he had hair and like he was wearing the shark skin suits. The guy looked like a gangster. It was perfect. I really do urge people to look those episodes up. If anything, Crime Story was just, maybe we can go down that rabbit hole one night and discuss that. That was a great show. Great show that hopefully we can explore in the future. Dice is a great actor. And the other day, I don't know if I was either home from work or if it was a weekend or whatever, but The Adventures of Fort Fairlane were on. And I was like, let me watch this. It's been some time, and I'm watching this thing, and what a heaping, steaming pile of crap The Adventures of Fort Fairlane was. I mean, this thing was so bad, and here's the thing, it's like, you can just tell watching that this film was conceived behind an oak desk. Let's make a movie about a rock and roll detective. That's it. That was the pitch of the movie. And this was the height of MTV. This was what, 89, 90, something like that?
Yeah.
Everything was music videos. They shot this thing that looked like a music video. And as well as I do, I hate movies that look like 90s movies, where they're filled with every 90s movie trope: shadows, slow motion, doves, just flashy everything. It was over the top.
That sounds awful.
Excess. Yeah. So that's really basically what this movie was. I mean, I'm not saying that this could have been a good movie. I mean, a private detective that catered to the music industry sounds like a really cool thing, okay? But they built it around the Dice persona, and everyone ran amok with 90s tropes, and the movie suffered awfully. And I think there was a way to make that movie good, like actually good, But it was just, oh, please. If you see it one day, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that he can act. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of people don't realize that he actually is a good actor.
And I think that was my point, was that even, I mean, he was in this film. I mean, it was obvious he had to really carry this movie. He had a lot to carry. This was a big budgeted summer film. And I think, unfortunately, because it tanked at the box office, between performance and reviews, that he kind of took the hit for that. And I don't think we really saw him in movies after that, if at all, because his star was starting to fall a little bit. And it wasn't until the CBS sitcom, I even forget the name of it. Oh man, I should have looked it up before the show.
I think
where he was on a sitcom.
It was something with Dice in it, but Dice Unveiled or something like that.
No, his name was not in the title. It was basically just your average CBS sitcom where he played a working dude. And I have a little story to say about that. Let me just look that up real quick. Wait, I'm gonna find out what it was. Hold up. All right, it was called. Give me 1 second. It was called blah blah blah. You know what? I can't find it. But you know what?
Was it Bless This House?
Was it Bless This House? Oh shit! I don't know. Here's the deal, though. I interviewed him. Back in.
It was Bless This House.
Bless This House. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was Kathy Moriarty was his co-star.
Exactly. It was Kathy Moriarty. Kathy Moriarty of Raging Bull played his wife.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him. I think he was making one of his minor comebacks as far as the stage was concerned, stand up, and he was playing the Garden, and he sold out the Garden in New York again. After doing it probably 10 years before that, he sold it out 2-3 nights, and I interviewed him, and I got to be honest, I was kind of nervous, when I was interviewing Dice. I mean, who wouldn't be nervous interviewing Dice?
I would be too, yeah.
Well, I mean, for a few reasons. I mean, I was his target demographic when he was coming up. I was young, I was male, I was Italian. It was him, it was Eddie Murphy. I mean, really, that was it. And so I was kind of nervous, and I didn't know what kind of mood he'd be in. I used to interview a lot of comedians, and they were either great interviews or awful interviews. And I know that sounds like ridiculous to say, yeah, it's going to be great or bad, but you don't know what kind of mood these guys.
We've been reminded recently with the passing of Jerry Lewis just how uncomfortable and awful an interview with a comedian could be.
And you know what? A colleague of mine had a run-in with Jerry Lewis, and it was just like that. It was just like that. She was a young female reporter. She was a really great writer who dove in, and it was not Vicky Hyman, who really dove into her subjects. And I think she was probably a little bit of a fan. And I don't know, for whatever reason, he rubbed her the wrong way. And she still got a really good interview out of it. It wasn't as horrendous as this other Jerry Lewis Hollywood Reporter video. For anyone who hasn't seen it, please go. I mean, it is the most uncomfortable 7 minutes you'll ever watch. But to get back to the Dice interview, he was actually a really cool dude. I mean, he was a nice guy. And he sounded like Dice. It was like you were talking to Dice. And, once you get over the minor starstruck moment of, oh, my God, I'm talking to Andrew Dice Clay, we started to talk about that sitcom, Bless This House.
Yeah.
And he was a little, I'm not going to say bitter, but I guess that's how I would feel if this were me. He feels that show didn't get a fair shake. I think it was still around, what was that, the year 2001 or 2002? He was still reeling from that 90s backlash a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he had a few down years, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this was before the newfound Dice resurgence. This was before Entourage.
Yeah.
And, I think CBS caught some flack. They might have lost some sponsors. And we all know, I mean, CBS still is the king of the the 3-camera sitcom in front of a studio
kind of
audience.
The safe,
Yeah, that's what they do. And if you're gonna hire a working class character, for a working class sitcom, you get a guy like Dice. So, I think the show got decent enough reviews. It was an unoffensive comedy. Kathy Moriarty played the loyal wife, but they canceled the show, and he was a little bit bitter about that because he told me that it wasn't even, I think, a year later that they cast Kevin James in King of Queens.
And that took off. Because that could have been him, yeah.
Yeah, and it was basically the same kind of thing. Kevin James played like a UPS driver.
Yeah.
He kind of had the hot wife, Leia Remini, and it was kind of like the working schlub who comes home. Where's my dinner? Where's my beer? Whatever. But he basically he didn't say Kevin James stole my sitcom, but he kind of said that the network wanted that kind of a show. They railroaded Dice, and they got Kevin James, and boom.
They want the working class sitcom without the controversy, and of course,
exactly.
I guess not. Yeah, because the mainstream audience, not everyone realizes that he's playing a character and that he's not, Diceman.
Exactly.
In his real life,
Exactly, and you know what? I'm guessing, the conspiracy theorist to me, that was probably a happy accident, because maybe if that didn't happen, he wouldn't have landed on Entourage for a couple seasons, and then from that he might not have gotten the Blue Jasmine film. Everything kind of trickles down, I guess, the way it should be, and I'm kind of glad that it did, because now he's making A Star Is Born. They're remaking A Star Is Born.
I saw that. That should be interesting. With Clint Eastwood's directing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this guy. He's working with some really great people. So I don't want the audience out there to discount this Dice show as kind of like just it's Andrew Dice Clay. There's going to be a lot of cursing. Yeah, there's some cursing, but I do think underneath it all, this is a very sweet show about a loyal guy to his girlfriend, and he's got his one best friend, Milkshake, who's hilarious, played by Kevin Corrigan, character actor Kevin Corrigan, by the way, great actor. You've seen him in Goodfellas, the brother in the wheelchair, and a slew of other films. He was on Mark Maron's podcast about a year or two ago. Great interview. So I do want people to give this show a shot. I think they'll be surprisingly entertained by it. Correct?
I think so too. They got an extra episode because the first season was 6. This season's going to be 7. And they have some really good guest stars lined up. Ron Livingston, Mickey Rourke.
Oh my God!
Michael
really?
Imperioli is going to be on this season. So it's going to be an interesting season. Last season you had a few good guest stars too. You mentioned Michael Rappaport, and there are a few. I think you had Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody, Rita Rudner, and Chris Angel, Mind Freak, was on the Magician. That was another great episode.
So I think he has. It's going to be an interesting season. I definitely have my DVR set to record that one. And I enjoyed the first episode. David Arquette was in this first episode as well.
David Arquette, like David Arquette playing David Arquette.
Yeah, exactly.
And also David Arquette playing Jason Bourne. Matt Damon is Jason Bourne.
Yeah, that did make me laugh because he's in this dream reality, and in this reality, everyone he knows is better off, at least seemingly better off, rather, I should say. And David Arquette has this career where he's Jason Bourne and he's this big, A-list, action star. It's David Arquette. Come on. But
hilarious.
That's the whole point of the episode. The humor is great. I do love it. And the way I kind of describe it to people I know is it's kind of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm for Dice.
And I think this is a good segue because let's talk about the format for a second. We it kind of harkens back to Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Okay. Seinfeld, obviously the multi-camera show, and it kind of morphed into Curb Your Enthusiasm, which kind of morphed into a show like Louie, which kind of really morphed into other offshoots like Marin and Better Things on FX with Pamela Adlon, and to shows like, Dice. Now, is this the lazy way out?
It depends on the subject. I mean, I like Dice, so I don't mind. I think had this come earlier, because I know it just came out like last year. So if this had come around before Curb Your Enthusiasm, I would have really been into the show. But even though it's come about now, even though it reminds me a little bit of Curb Your Enthusiasm, I don't really think of it as a knockoff or anything like that.
Right.
It's its own thing. I'm not really tired of the format. I think it's it just depends on the subject. I mean, if you like the performer that the series is centered around, then you're going to like the show.
Right. I mean, like even with Marin, who I'm a huge Mark Maron fan.
Yeah.
He played Mark Maron, who had a podcast in his garage. So he was kind of like another version of himself. Not to mention, a show like Episodes, who had, where we see Matt LeBlanc playing an asshole version of Matt LeBlanc.
Yeah.
So it kind of can get not confusing, but like, what am I watching? Is this real? Is it not? And of course, Larry David just did it perfectly because there were no real scripts. I mean, and that's obviously coming back. August 4th? Not August.
October
4th.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to that because obviously we know that there's a lot of material to harness.
Oh my
for
God.
that show. Since
it's been
gone.
it's been like 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's been I think almost 9 years. I think like 8 or 9 years. But yeah. I mean, if you think about what the world was like, when that show, the last season of that show.
Right.
Yeah. Social media has sort of is different than it was
media.
back then. Yeah. It was around, but it wasn't to the extent that it is now. So it'd be interesting to see if what he tackles, and I'm looking forward to that show coming.
Like, I just want to see Larry David with an iPhone. Right? Like,
I don't know if he's going to be Instagramming or anything like that. But
it would be weird, right?
It would be weird. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my Dice story?
I think you have to. I've heard it, but I think you need to tell it again because I think our listeners will want to hear it.
Okay, so here's the thing. Back when I was in college, I was in a TV production class, and our teacher worked for Channel 9, which is WOR in the general area here, right? So they agreed to give us 30 minutes on a Sunday night in August to do a news magazine show. Okay, so the class must have had 10 kids, and we each took a segment, and we all worked on our segments. And one of our ideas was, let's interview Andrew Dice Clay. So we were trying to get, I got to be honest, we were trying to get Andrew Dice Clay to come on this show or for us to go there and interview him. And I think at the time, I don't know, I think it was his father managed him, or I don't know what the deal was, but he wasn't going anywhere near our show.
Yeah.
So, why would he? So he was appearing in my town, and I lived in a town where we once had this legendary comedy club called Rascals Comedy Club. It was one of those
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you've heard of Rascals. I mean, especially if you listen to Stern a lot. But it's the kind of place where you walk in and there's 1,000 8x10s on the wall of every comic that's ever walked in, from Eddie Murphy to Jay Leno to Chris Rock. So Dice was going to be there, and I bought tickets. And I took my girlfriend there at the time, and we went to dinner upstairs. And the way they worked it was that if you ate dinner there at the restaurant, you got better seats for the show. You didn't sit in the back; you sat in the general area of the front. So I remember we're eating dinner, and the waiter comes up, and the waiter says, do you want to, or the manager he said, do you want to sit up front? Do you want to sit up front? And my girl at the time's like, yeah, you know, almost did like a little clappy thing with her hands. I was like, oh, Christ, like, I don't want to sit up front. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it means you can get picked on. Yeah.
Yeah, you could get picked on. I mean, are you kidding? So, like, we were the plants. So we literally sit up front. I could put my elbow on the stage. I mean, that's how up front we were. And they introduce him. I mean, like, the room itself is like a basement. It's really not that large. He comes out. He's got the rock music playing. He's got his leather jacket. He's a big guy. And he looked at me and he goes, anyone using that ashtray? And I was like so like petrified that I grabbed the ashtray and I just handed it to him. I didn't even make any eye contact with him because I knew I was gonna be I was gonna be the one. And you know, my girl at the time, you know, she was cute and everything. So, you know, he saw her and you know, we were an easy target, an easy mark. So he basically just nonstop picked on me and her for the entire like 90-minute show or whatever it was.
Oh,
like
it must have felt like a 5-hour show.
I couldn't wait to leave. I was sweating. I remember exactly what I was wearing that night because he was making fun of my shirt. He was making fun of my shirt. He was making fun of my hair. He basically made fun of everything. So flash forward like, I don't know, it was 90, I don't know, like 20-something years later, and I'm in Las Vegas, and we're at the Stardust, and we somehow, I don't know if we got tickets or if my wife's sister won tickets, I don't know, but it's Andrew Dice Clay, and it's at the Stardust. Okay, Stardust was ready to fall down. Basically, it was one of those old carpet joints that saw better days, but Dice was there, and so we went. So again, we're sitting there up front, and literally he starts picking on people at my table because that's how close we were, and he picks on the guy, I am not joking, literally sitting next to me, strictly because he was wearing khakis. And I was like, he locked in on this guy, and I was like, holy shit, it's happening again. It's happening again. I can't get away from this. And thankfully, like, I must have like shrunken my seat literally to the size of a pea because like thankfully he didn't go anywhere near me. But that's my Dice story. If you go see Dice, people, don't sit up front because he will pick on you. And, you know, not mean, but well, maybe kind of mean, but like funny mean, you know, like Dice mean.
Yeah, it's breaking your balls.
Exactly. That's exactly what he does. Yeah. So just be prepared for that. You know, look, it's going to be either that or the Blue Man Group when you get wet. So, you know, you either get wet or you get picked on. Your choice in Vegas. So, Jack, that's my story.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people could say they've been picked on by Dice, but you've interviewed him, and you almost got picked on him by him a second time.
A second time. Well, a lot of people ask me. He goes, Aunt, when you interviewed him, did you tell him that like? Yeah,
I was going to ask you that.
He picked on you, and I was like, no, I didn't. The answer is no. B, like I just, you know, you don't get a lot of time with these guys. And you get the sense that it's just as painful for them because they want to get done with the promoter, right. Whatever they're promoting.
And you don't want to make the interview about yourself either, you know, because it's not for your, it's for a
exactly.
newspaper.
Exactly. And you know what? Let's be frank. I mean, unless you have a TV camera, they're really not going to be super on, you know.
Right.
I will say this. Probably one of the best interviews I've ever done with a comedian was with D.L. Hughley. That guy was amazing. I remember he told me he specifically went to his office, he shut the door, and he really wanted to have a conversation.
Wow.
And it was one of the great ones. So that's that. So Sunday nights. Dice, right?
Sunday nights, Dice. Yeah, I mean, if you could stick around after Twin Peaks and Ray Donovan, definitely you have a chance to check out Dice, and you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, no, you will not be disappointed, and you will not be disappointed the way Jack is disappointed in the mess that is Twin Peaks. Correct?
Well, I come and go. Like Twin Peaks is, I mean, it is a mess, but I'm hanging in there. There are things I like, there are things I don't like. So I wouldn't say overall I'm disappointed, but it's definitely a journey.
Yeah, well, you know what you should have done? You should have used all this Twin Peaks time to watch Ray Donovan from the first season until now. And you would have been a lot more fulfilled, believe me.
Yeah, I'm sure I would, yes.
Will you be catching people up as to your thoughts about Twin Peaks at some point?
Yeah, I think, well, the finale is September 3rd, so I might do something that week. Yeah, maybe do either a solo, or I might get a friend to do with me, because I know you don't follow that show.
Oh, God, I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, you don't want me talking about Twin Peaks.
I'm still trying to explain to myself how David Bowie's character turned into a tea kettle. So
but you know, I said that the other day, and I think someone was really impressed by that little reference I made. I made that as a joke, so I was like, "No, I don't watch that show. I just heard he turned into a tea kettle or some shit like that."
Yeah, or I'm gonna have to get Vicky to talk about it with me.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll get Vicky on here. All right, Jack. Well, hickory dickory dock. I think we're done. I can't finish that because it's this is a family show, so to speak.
Yeah, we don't want to scare people away.
No. I don't know what we have planned next, but where can people find you online?
You can find me at Jack Lugo 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Twitter, there is a blog.
There's
Twitter.
A blog there. If you go to my Twitter site, there's a link to my blog. And there's some interesting things coming up. I think we were talking about maybe discussing the new Whitney Houston documentary coming up on Showtime. That should be interesting. And I'm almost done with Bloodline, so I'm pretty sure we're going to have a discussion about that.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have a good discussion about Bloodline. All right, so that's coming up. We are building a website. I know it's taking painfully long, and it's embarrassing at this point. But as I was explaining to Jack at the beginning of the show, before we came on, you tend to lose energy at night when you're older, like I am. And once 9:30 comes, you're done. So enjoy it while you have it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, let it take your time. There's no rush.
Yeah. Jack, as always, been fun.
Yes.
And we'll catch you guys sometime soon. Take care.
Enjoyed this episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint? Then don't forget to tip the barkeep by subscribing and reviewing us on iTunes and Stitcher. Also, for some sizzling noir tales, head on over to Amazon to check out Anthony's hard-boiled fiction, available in print, digital, and audiobook formats. On social media, follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Venutolo, or like his page on Facebook. For everything else, please visit his webpage at www.anthonyvenutolo.com. We'll see you next week.